Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in Beyond Connections, where you guys can ask us questions about anything about the stock market. Let me introduce ourselves. So, I am Rainier Yu. I cover the uh, power and consumer companies in the PSG, and I'm joined by.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm Beth Santiago, one of the analysts for Abacus Securities and MyTrade. I cover banks, economy, recently telco also. And also you're also joined by
I'm Isaiah, one of the technical analysts for Apple Securities. I'm going to share with you some very good looking charts today.
Good Looking.
Good.
Okay, yes, we're very excited for that. I see. So while we wait for everyone's question, so in case you didn't know, this is our segment where basically you guys can ask us analyst questions about the smart stock market, and it has been an eventful week to say the least. And what about you, Bess? What do you want to discuss first?
Well, headlines for today, GDP growth was at 6.3%, so higher than what we were expecting, but this was in line with market's expectations. Uh, This was mainly driven by very strong construction sector growth. Construction in total contributed uh, almost half of the GDP growth rate, so about 2.8 percentage points. This is coming from a very low base from last year and also was boosted by uh, perhaps the summer months enabling and also El Nino being very dry, enabling longer construction activities. Um, Also driven by or supported by higher infrastructure spending by the government. Actually, most of the growth from construction was from actually public construction growth. So that's also a big factor into why that sector was such a big contributor to GDP growth. But there are also uh, some support. There was also some support from overall government spending. This grew by 10%. And then the other components, particularly household spending, was quite weak. This was still at uh, below 5% for the second quarter. So it grew 4.3%, I believe. Still uh, quite low even this far out from the pandemic. So that's one of the weak points that we're seeing in the GDP numbers. Also, net exports was negative also for the second quarter and pulled down um, GDP. Although for the next few quarters, we are not expecting the strong construction growth to be as sustainable since the rains usually lessen the activities of the construction sector, and also there would be a much lesser low base effect for the third and fourth quarters for construction and overall capital formation growth. So we have to wait and see um, where the numbers trend going forward. But overall, quite good number for GDP released this morning. So
Okay.
many comments from in the comment section. Hello, LB De La Cruz and Nelson Miller.
Yes, so they have an interesting conversation. But LB has an interesting question as well. So, how's your port? And thank you for what you mentioned, Bess. And given GDP numbers today, the market hasn't really reacted to that, ending up pretty much flat for today. And over the past weeks, basically over the past week, the volatility has caused the market to pretty much end in flat year to date, so erasing basically the gains that we have accumulated over the past months. So now we're almost back to square one, although I guess this is one of the questions that could be a catalyst moving forward. So, from LB to Blood Cruz, on a serious note, what is the probability that BSP will cut rates next week, given we already have the data needed?
Okay, that's very timely question. So the data that we needed, mainly that was the inflation print that was announced last Tuesday. That was at 4.4%, higher than the market expectations, but within the target range of the BSP. No, not target range, forecast range. It was higher than the target range for the year. So that's that, and also the inline with expectations GDP growth announced this morning were the two data points that the BSP is expected to be considering when they meet next week, August 15, and decide on their monetary policy. So with inflation being high, relatively high compared to the previous months, and GDP also coming in not so weak, that has maybe um, put it into people's minds that there could be some doubt that the the rate cut that Governor Romolona was signaling for August could be postponed to a later date. However, we believe that the higher inflation rate for July is quite transitory. Um, uh, Starting this month, the impact of the tariff cut on rice prices will start to be felt in the retail markets, and this should have a very large impact on the overall inflation rate since rice has quite a large weight on the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, and the expected decrease in rice prices is also quite sharp. Um, so currently the uh, inflation rate for rice for July was still at double digits, 20.2%. And we expect that to even become negative by the latter part of the third quarter or in the first part of the fourth quarter. So we believe that the BSP is also looking at that, and so that I don't think that they will see the July inflation print as a big deterrent to cutting rates to next month. Also, as mentioned earlier, the construction growth, contribution of construction to GDP was quite outsized, and also boosted by very low base from the previous year, which won't be in the low base factor won't be in play as much in the next two quarters. And actually, we did some estimates, and if we account for the low base from last year, meaning if last year's construction growth was average instead of being quite flat, and then construction GDP levels for the second quarter uh, is still where they are now, the overall GDP growth would have been below 5.5%. So we estimated actually at 5.1. So the low base effect is actually quite substantial. So this would mean that there's that this uh, the other part since the other parts of the economy are seeing some weakness, particularly household spending. That could be one reason for the BSB not to postpone the rate cut expected next week. I spoke for a long time, I'm so sorry. But now that there are a lot more questions in the chat box, so maybe we can move on.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Bess. Yes, I think rice prices have still been trending. Last we checked, still trending at 45 to 50 retail prices. So we should expect that to taper off in the coming months with the tariffs being decreased. Now, next question from Sir LB again. So one of the trending stocks lately, ASEN. Do you think this will continue going back to 6 to 7 peso level in the short term? So today, ASEN released their earnings report for the first half 2024, or basically the second quarter, which turned out pretty good. With first half reporting that if you take out the one-offs, that it ended at 4.9 billion, which is about 53% of full year consensus. So basically, they are ahead of the estimates. So basically, they are performing better than expected, with several of its plants coming online, mostly in the Philippines, and some of it in international as well. But most of its concentration that have come online are here in the Philippines, and they have sold more into Wesam, so they are exposed more to the spot prices, and with the elevated spot prices, they have benefited from that. So we should know more about its results and basically its outlook after today, since they are holding their briefing later. So just for the viewers, information will be ending quite early today to give weight for those. So that's for the funda. Maybe you can take a look at no, technicals
Let's have a look at the
or
charts
ASIN.
of ASIN. This was mentioned in short takes back in July, am I right?
Yes.
Yes. So, so as early as July, it was mentioned in short takes. So just look at the technicals. It has formed an inverted head and shoulder, which traditionally projects a target of about mga 7 pesos. So if you're looking for a stop, it would be at about mga 479 pesos. Volume was more than above average today, and the long-term uptrend has turned out.
Okay, thank you for that, IC. So interesting to know that about ASEN. Hope we answered your questions, Sir LB. And before we go back to the more macro questions, maybe we can move on first. We can proceed first with more of the corporate. So what do you think about MWC? Also released their financial report today.
So they released, Manila Water released their first half results today. They were in line with our expectations, but ahead of market expectations. So net income grew quite strongly. If I recall correctly, it was 37% higher than last year for the first half. This is still due to the um, tariff increase that was implemented at the start of the year. So that their average tariff increased by 21%. If you recall, there was a rate rebasing exercise conducted last or 2 years ago. The first tranche happened in at the start of last year, and then this year we had second tranche. So there are still a few more tranches left for the coming years. So we do expect Manila Water's revenues to continue to grow in the medium term because of that rate increase. Also, their tariffs were also increased by adjustments for inflation, and inflation rate in the first half was relatively higher, so that also contributed to the higher tariffs. Also, build volume growth for the first half was quite strong as well at 2%. And also the fear at the start of the second quarter that El Nino would have a big impact on build volume and water supply. Fortunately, this did not materialize into water shortages. And right now, the Angat Dam is back up to the rule curve level because of the recent rain. So that's a risk that is no longer uh, a big factor going forward for Manila Water. So all in all, quite good results for the company.
Okay, thank you for that, Bess. Maybe you can take a look at the technicals for MWC.
Okay. So MWC has consolidated recently between 25 pesos and 28 pesos. So if you are going to use a trailing stop, you might want to use a trailing stop at 23.89 pesos, which is over this level here. So volume has been declining, which tends to be bullish, tends to be result on the bullish side, tends to be result towards the upside. So that's it for MWC.
Okay, thank you. I see. So, moving on to the next question. So, hi guys, your thoughts on Cebu Pacific? They made a very big bet buying those planes. Won't they still be vulnerable to fuel price and forex fluctuations? So, I think there are two parts on this question. So first, on the big bet buying those planes. So I think you're referring to the 100 plus plane order. And just to clarify, Cebu Pacific ordered those planes not for this year or next year, but they are planning that for its long-term plan. So those planes that order that 100 plus order will be coming starting 2028 and up until the 2030s. So it's really more of a long-term forward projection or buy for Cebu Pacific in purchasing those plays. So, but it's still a big bet since they are banking on the growth of the Philippines aviation sector with demand continuing to grow. And what we are seeing this year is they are still seeing seat growth actually ahead of its own expectations. So I think initially they were only expecting about low single digit seat growth for 2024, but they have made adjustments. So seat growth is expected to be much higher this year, and we'll know basically more on that later as well as they hold their briefings. And given Q2 results weren't so bad, but the bottom line were affected by various factors, and you mentioned some of that in fuel prices and forex fluctuations. Basically, forex with the peso depreciating, not good for SEB since a lot of their costs and loans are denominated in dollars. So the higher the USD, the more they pay in peso terms, and then the fuel price as well. But fortunately, over the past week, fuel price and both and the USD conversion has become more favorable on their end. So once these two come closer to, I guess, or basically much lower and stabilize on those levels, should be positive for SET. But for Q2, we did see these two factors peaking at that point in time, and it should, it will still continue to be volatile, and that is the risk involving SET. So, but something to point out for SET, if you, in case you didn't see, they have completed or they are about to complete their equity restructuring that should free up retained earnings in that will free up or that will lead the door to them paying out dividends for its CP. So that's why we have been positive on CP and probably even more CP over SEB because of its dividends in arrears. So basically, they have owed dividends to investors over the past 3 years, and basically has accumulated, and they should be they are close in paying that, and yield for that is probably close to 20% or even more. So that's it for Cebu Pacific. I think we can move on to the next question. Bess, do you want to take,
Which one?
or do you want to go back to the macro questions?
Okay, either. So they're both from LB.
Yeah.
Hi LB. What will be the effect of the Fed cut rate if the Fed cut rates ahead of the BSP? So actually we're already seeing some of the effect of this and this prediction or anticipation with the appreciation of the peso in recent days. Currently, I think it's at 57.26 already. So, if the Fed does cut rates ahead of the BSP, we should see more strengthening of the peso because the interest rate differential will widen. However, we still expect BSP to cut rates next week, and even if they don't, and the Fed does cut rates ahead, we overall, cumulatively up to next year, we expect the Fed to cut rates more than the BSP, so that the interest rate differential would still be when sustain over the course of up to the end of next year, and would lend to the sustainability of the exchange rate strength for the peso. But yeah, for the short term, if this scenario happens, we expect the peso to continue to strengthen up to when the BSP starts to cut. And then your other question on sa baba, lower down. What are your expectations with BPI earnings for second quarter, given that BDO and Metrobank is more than 10% higher than previous quarter, noting that BPI has high base in the first quarter. Actually, BPI was the very first to report their earnings for 2Q. Maybe you missed that because it was so early in the earnings season. Their net income growth for the second quarter was actually quite good at 17%. This was due to the fact that their loan growth was faster than both BDO and Metrobank, also growing by 17%. And this was in turn due to the fact that they merged with Robinsons Bank at the start of the year, which added to their loan portfolio and also shifted their loan mix a bit more towards consumer, which is something that they are focusing on. They have been focusing on in the last few quarters and will be their parang trust for the foreseeable future. And this will allow them to keep their NIM stable for even if the interest rates start to go down once the BSB does start to cut. So there. One thing to note for BPI, announced last Monday the index rebalancing results. No changes to the constituents of the index, but we are expecting weight changes for BPI and Bloom since their float levels have decreased from where they were during the previous rebalancing. So there may be some volatility for BPI and Bloom, especially for BPI since BPI has higher weight than Bloom on the index. We're expecting a lot of volatility tomorrow, which is the last day to trade on the rate changes since the implementation of the index rebalancing will be on market open on Monday. And so I think we only have time for one more question, but we've already answered all of them in the chat box. Am I right? Can we review if we missed any? Parang wala naman. Okay, so if you have any questions that you will think of after this, you can post them to the MyTrade Map Facebook group if you're already a client, and we'll try our best to answer your questions there. And if you're still not yet a client, please sign up for MyTrade, and then you can post your questions on the Facebook group as well. And you can also see IC's charts almost daily. He puts in a stock pick for the day, sometimes 2 or 3. That is a advantage as well if you join MyTrade Map Facebook group.
So this, yeah. I think there's a comment as well. Keep us posted on ASEN. Thank you. Well, I know. Just tune in. Keep tuning in for especially for tomorrow's short takes on more takes on ASEN and as well as the other companies that have reported today. So I guess that's it. Sorry guys, we have to cut the segment short today, and we hope to see you again in the next 2 weeks, and it will likely be there will likely be more events that you can ask about, and basically market is eventful and alive and kicking. So enjoy the ride, guys.
Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. And don't forget to like and subscribe the video and the channel for MyTrade. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.